the car gives you it's an access point that everyone can relate to.
Yeah.
And even if you're not super passionate about cars, you don't need to be too interested in cars to understand how this stuff that's coming down the track is going to impact you. And again, that's where the YouTube channel is resonating with people, because not everybody wants to drive around in a 1990s Volvo, but I can guarantee you that not everyone wants to pay a low emission zone charge that makes absolutely no sense when you dig just slightly below the surface. And that, it was on the back of the ULEZ stuff. As I started to, one of the videos that really pushed my channel in front of most people was I'd done a big video about the 2009 scrappage scheme. I was the first sort of journalist, in inverted comments, when the government, 10 years after the 2009 scrappage scheme, the government released an Excel spreadsheet of every vehicle that was scrapped during that scrappage scheme. And I was the first person I was the first person who was that anal and bothered to go through the spreadsheet line by line by line on this massive spreadsheet and go, okay, there were this many BMW 7 Series, and out of this many 7 Series, this many with a 6-cylinder, this many with a V8, there were this many V12s. And I literally did the whole spreadsheet and I put it on a video. And it was my most popular video before the channel really boomed. And then when Sadiq Khan turns around 2 years ago and says, we're doing another scrappage scheme, that was when I had a moment. I was like, oh, I need to address this, because once again, I looked at the numbers. He's like, right, I'm going to save X amount of tons of carbon. We're going to put X amount of money in. We're going to scrap X amount of cars. And I did some very basic calculations and went, balls, all of it. It's all balls. So that was one of the videos that again, pushed the channel out to people, because it's just helping people understand that, on the headline is always, it's about clean air and it's about making things better. And you scratch away and you go, oh, no, it's not. It never is. And it's amazing how, with a lot of this stuff on the car front, it doesn't even stand up to basic scrutiny, like just basic understandings of science and technology. But I think the EV thing as well, it snuck up on us. All us car guys and all the people that love the car industry. Tesla came along when they finally got their game together and had a viable alternative as daily transport, and we're all like, yeah, fair enough, Tesla want to do that, then that's fine. Some people want electric cars, some people in California want to show off and have a Tesla. No big deal. And then suddenly the legislation and the governments and all the manufacturers start changing around it, and you stand up and go, whoa, hold on a minute. The arrival of Tesla wasn't just about an alternative vehicle. There's a whole new agenda behind this now. And I don't think people realize just what a state the automotive sector is in right now. We really are staring down the barrel of the destruction of the European manufacturers. Volkswagen particularly are in a huge mess because of the overinvestment in a type of car that is not selling.
It's insane, and there's so many angles to this. Do you remember that film, Whatever Happened to the Electric Car? I think it was about 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And they brought, there was about a company in America, brought out a car that was totally viable as an electric vehicle. Then it just disappeared. And these guys and back then, I was like, electric car's a great idea, save the planet, because I was still half brainwashed back then.
Yeah.
And then, but when you look, and of course, I grew up with milk floats, and there were electric vehicles. And then you look into it, electric cars have been around for years, forever. And they had a bigger range 100 years ago than they do now.
And the interesting thing is, as well, they never went away. The concept, people like to think that the electric car came around in the old days, and then Henry Ford came along and said, right, let's build petrol cars, and they disappeared, and then they came back with Tesla. But actually, the manufacturers have always been trying to do electric, and it's the same with environmentalism as well. So I go back to my, I drive 1990s Volvos, and I've got the brochures, and you go back to the 1995 brochure, and there's a big page on how Volvo are launching a bi-fuel, clean fuel, environment-friendly car. This is in the 90s. Yeah. So they were always doing it, even without the agenda being pushed. There's a fantastic documentary, which I'll link you up to as well, about a German study that was done in, I think, the late 80s, early 90s. And the German government said, we want to experiment with the idea of electric cars. And there's an island, Germany has an island that I knew nothing about. And what the German government said was, we're going to have this island, and on this date, all of you manufacturers, send your electric car for testing. And that's exactly what happened. So it wasn't a case that they went out and built special electric cars. Mercedes had just launched the 190 Saloon. So they adapted a 190 Saloon to be an electric car, best looking electric car of all time. And all the manufacturers sent these electric cars to this island to be tested. And the net result of all the consultations and the study and everything of them driving thousands of miles around this island was that it ain't going to work. And yet still, 20 years later, we're trying it again. And the technology hasn't advanced. And, the battery fire thing, it is a real concern. I know you can say, it's very unlikely that your electric car might catch fire. And there's a lot of people in the comments that also, people will email me stuff, got part next to it.
They started blowing these things up remotely.
Yeah, exactly. So, the intensity of the fire when you've got thermal runaway in an EV battery, it's not, ignore the fact about you need your phone in order to charge it, and it's got to always be connected, and the manufacturer always knows. Ignore all of that. The fire risk alone and the intensity of that fire and the way the doors can lock with your kids stuck in it means I don't want anything to do with it.